So our theme is Srila Gurudev, by the request of Prema Sundari. And people ask that question, and I still find it very difficult to answer. Partly because I don't feel like I really had so much tangible association with Srila Gurudev, but also because the relationship with Guru is something, and our understanding of who Guru is something that's always evolving, It's not just that Gurudev was this, really nice person that we met and we had these experiences and we have so many stories about him and et cetera, but he's actually like present in our lives. It's a very spiritual, it's all the spiritual transaction. And our relationship with him is evolving in a spiritual way. And, it's a relationship that is independent, and and it's an inspiration that's independent of time, place, circumstance, all of these things of this limited world. So, it's like we're talking about something of an infinite nature, and like the Gurudev that we knew when we were, 5 years old and sucking our thumb, and the Gurudev that we've come to understand and know in the time that goes by. Those are two different persons. So it's difficult to really contain it and limit it through language, and our limited ability to understand and to communicate, to convey that. And yeah, it's a living and an evolving thing. We were remembering here the other day, Srila, there's this verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, famous verse, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra Koi, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. That's, all the scriptures declare, Sadhu Sangha, Sadhu Sangha, Sadhu Sangha. Through Sadhu Sangha, you can get everything. Lava Matra. Lava means like an instant of time. Literally, it's something like the 1/8 of a second or something like that. So it means like, it's usually translated as just through a moment's association with the real sadhu, you can get everything. Sarva Siddhi Hoy, all perfection can be attained simply through a moment or an instant association with the real devotee. So that can be understood in a more like simplistic sense that you can get everything just in a moment. But another way that it's been explained, Srila Swami Maharaj, he spoke about how his first meeting with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and how everyone knows that story. He wasn't really interested. He was very caught up with the Gandhi movement in India. He was absorbed in thoughts of independence and absorbed in those activities. But his friend convinced him to come and meet a real sadhu, and so he came. And in the beginning, they had like something of a debate, and but Srila Saraswati Thakur, he defeated him in the end. But Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he didn't immediately take it up, as his life's, culture. He went back to his life, his work, and it was years before he met Saraswati Thakur again. What to speak of thinking about initiation, etc. But in that time, in that interim period, he was carrying on with his daily activities. And he said from time to time he would remember that meeting that he had, and he said how he felt the influence of that become like revealing itself more and more within his heart as time went by. And he quoted that verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And here's Jayadev Prabhu, Dandavat, Jayadev. Very happy to see you. I was telling Chintamani, Jayadev, he just looks like one of the most gentle persons I've ever met.
I have you deceived. Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear me. Yeah, sorry, I'm still figuring out how to get on Zoom. I figured that she had to send me the link, but now I haven't figured out, so I'm glad to be here.
Okay, we're very happy to have you with us. And I think this link now, it won't change, right? It'll be the same link, so.
I believe it will be permanent. I also am not very familiar with Zoom, so I think I made it so this is permanent.
Okay, cool. That would be easier, yeah.
You made it a reoccurring meeting, so the link should be the same every time.
Okay, cool. We have an actual teenager present. They're the experts in this department. So Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he quoted this verse. Normally, ordinarily we think of it as meaning in one moment you get everything, but Srila Swami Maharaj gave this very nice interpretation of it, that you have that one moment, and then over time, like the power of that one moment is revealing itself within your life. And so similarly, we had that those few moments with Srila Govinda Maharaj. And, every moment with him was so profound. And it takes time to actually realize the significance of those moments. Everything with Srila Gurudev, like every word that he expressed, and every gesture, every movement, every expression, it was full of so much depth. It was so profound, and really it takes time to really realize the value and the significance of all of those moments that we had. And Gurudev, he was so, of course, persons who had more of a intimate relationship, intimate serving relationship with Gurudev, they were, they may have different experience. But basically Gurudev, he would not give you an instruction unless you were ready for it. And that applies to everybody, whether you were a close servitor or you weren't a close servitor. He wouldn't give you, it was never about, because we often see and observe within ourselves how we will give instruction, people will give instruction as an expression of their own ego, that there's this assertion of oneself. It's not just about trying to genuinely help somebody, and also considering not only that, because sometimes you can have good intentions, but it doesn't really work out. You also have to have the sensitivity and the vision to perceive what is this person actually ready for, and what are they actually capable of hearing and receiving right now. So with Gurudev, there was such a great depth of sensitivity in that regard. He was never imposing or forcing upon anyone. It was just about, what were you ready to hear? And if he saw that you weren't ready for that, then he would just withdraw. He could immediately detach. There was one nice little example of that, that Kumkum Didi told me, how the installation of the temple, of the deity in San Jose was taking place. Brajamohini Didi would have been there, of course. So I think it was the day of the installation, or maybe it was the day before, and there were preparations going on. And at one point, the altar was being prepared. And so Gurudev was seated in the temple room, and Kumkum was there, and maybe one or two others. And there was a devotee who was like fixing the altar, making arrangements on the altar. And Gurudev, he kept trying, he indicated something about the arrangement of the altar that he wasn't happy with. And the devotee there didn't understand where Gurudev was coming from. And so Gurudev like indicated 2 or 3 times, can you please do it like this? And that devotee just thought Gurudev was talking about something else and kept telling Gurudev, oh, don't worry, Gurudev, wait and see what I'm doing. You're gonna like it. Just not understanding at all what Gurudev was saying. And then finally Gurudev just kind of chuckled and he looked at the devotees in the room and said, oh, what can I do? Like, they're not listening to me, what can I do? And so Kumkum Didi was there, and for her, it was a moment of like profound instruction, because she was feeling like how we all do. You know, you're in those circumstances where you're trying to tell somebody something, and they're not hearing you, you know. And then what happens is that our ego starts to get in the situation, and it's not just about trying to fix something, but it's like, why aren't you listening to me? You know, and then, or you may just be frustrated because they're not doing it as you like, you know? And so then you get angry, and then things start to get a little messy. You know? So Kumkum like observed this the way that Gurudev handled this, and just how detached, and how, you know, he kept like a light, humorous mood. And she looked at herself with humility and felt like, wow, I have so much to learn. And then she ran across the room, and she just fell at Gurudev's feet. And she said, Gurudev, I have so much ego. And this is so Gurudev too, like how he would just like could slip in like so many instructions in the space of a few minutes. And so she fell at Gurudev's feet. And, oh, Gurudev, I have so much ego. And then Gurudev, he just flipped it around again, and he told her, he said, your ego is that you are a servant of Guru and Govinda. Something like that. Like she was, because normally we use the word ego in a negative sense. Govinda Nandini remembers this. She extracted this from me. He like just flipped it around, and he told her, your ego is that you are a servant of Guru and Govinda, something like that. Because we normally use the word ego in the pejorative sense, you know, it's a negative thing. But actually ego it just means identity. You know, it just means, you know, how we identify ourselves. So, you know, he just, you know, turned it around like that, like adjust yourself in this consciousness that you are a servant. You are a servant of Shri Guru and Vaishnava. You know, he was always just on that note. You know, he could like just change everything. You know, he could, you know, you could be like in a moment of deep despair and negativity, and Gurudev, he could just tune into everybody's heart, and he knew like exactly what to say, or the expression or something, you know, he could just totally like flip things around and turn something in like a moment of great despair into the most beautiful thing. Yudamanyu Prabhu, he told me, I'm just rambling, okay, I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna ramble. Yudamanyu Prabhu, just stories about Gurudev that are coming to mind. Yeah. But Yudamanyu Prabhu told me of this one occasion when he called Gurudev. There were a few examples he gave me how Gurudev really encouraged him. Well, there was one time when he came back from China, and you know how excited Gurudev was about the preaching in China. So for those of you who didn't know Yudamanyu Prabhu, he was an American devotee who was kind of like a pioneer in our mission. he started our mission in South Africa. He was one of the founders in America. And then he also started a small preaching mission in China. So he was like a hero, basically, for us. And Gurudev appreciated his service so much. And so there was one time when he came back from China, visited Gurudev in India, and everyone was talking about China. Everyone was so excited. He was getting so much praise. And Gurudev was praising him so much. The devotees were praising him. And then so one day he was sitting with, and meanwhile, Udamani was like looking at himself and feeling like, I'm not all of those things. And then so one day he just burst out to Gurudev, like feeling really bad. I'm just a fraud. I'm just a fraud. It's all a show. And he said immediately, Gurudev looked at him and really happy, and he said, then this is real. This is real. If that's how you're feeling, that means this is something authentic. This is something genuine. And he told me this other time, very sweet, when he called Gurudev up. I think it must have been from China also. And he didn't know at the time that Gurudev was at the San Francisco airport. And so he didn't know Gurudev was surrounded by like a whole bunch of devotees. And Udamani was on the phone telling him, like feeling really bad, and expressing his lowliness to Gurudev and feeling like, I can't do this. I'm all alone here. I have no capacity, red China. And Gurudev, well, one of the things Gurudev told him was, never think that you're alone. I am with you, Guru Maharaj is with you, and Swami Maharaj is with you. Never think that you're alone. And then he also told him, when he was expressing all these like negative feelings of negativity, then Gurudev told him, you sound just like Rupan Sanatan. They make such deep expressions of negativity. So he was like feeling so bad, and Gurudev just flipped it into this very encouraging and very, very happy, discussion. So, yeah, he was just so, the thing that strikes me the most about, in my relationship, whatever little relationship I had with Gurudev, is how he was so personal and so specific in how he dealt with us. It was never like I'm a guru running a mission, or I'm a head of a mission. It was never like that. It was all he like, at the expense of successfully running a mission, he took care of the individuals. It was more about personal care of the individuals than running a success, like from the point of view of like what you might call human resources management and all this kind of stuff. And it wasn't like that. It wasn't necessarily even practical, like the way that he did things, but it was really caring about what is the need of this particular individual right now. Like one example I really appreciate Sudarshan Prabhu. He told me how Gurudev, he saved Sudarshan. He used to have this really good job with like eBay or something, like eBay or Amazon or one of those. I think it was eBay, right? So he was making good money, and so at one point he was able to save up $200,000, and he was so happy, thinking, I'm going to be able to present this to Gurudev. And so he came to Gurudev at one time in India, and he told Gurudev, I've got this $200,000 for you, Gurudev. I'm ready to transfer it over. And Gurudev just looked at him and he said, not necessary, Prabhu. It's not necessary. And And you know, this was like devastating for Sudarshan. His mind was like blown, like this was like a major achievement for him to have this huge sum of money, and he's handing it. Gurudev just tells him, not necessary, not necessary. And so then Sudarshan's sitting there like kind of stupefied. And then he says, well, if you don't want the money, Gurudev, then maybe I could use it for some project. And he said, I was thinking of opening a home for older devotees, you know, like older retired devotees who you know, they need help, they need care. And Gurudev told him, the idea is good, but you must cut your coat according to your cloth. That was something Gurudev would say sometimes. You know, we may have these very high-flying, ambitious ideas, but do we actually have the capacity to do it? And so again, Sudarshan was feeling a little discouraged. And so he said in the end, he decided to invest the money, and he lost everything. Lost every dollar. But it's just, it's so, you know, incredible. It's just so profound that, like why did Gurudev refuse that money? You know, he's thinking, you know, for only reasons he can say that, you know, for the welfare of Sudarshan, you know, something that he wanted to adjust in Sudarshan's conception. You know, so you know, he could have taken that money, like in a practical sense, and done many things for it, done many good things for it. But it was more important to him to value Sudarshan's individual progress as a practitioner, as an authentic practitioner of Krishna consciousness. So, you know, things like that, you know, he was so personal, he was so individual. And when I think in my own life, like the way that he like managed me, you know, like at the time I didn't appreciate it. And it was only like years later after Gurudev left that I really began to appreciate like how, I don't want to say intelligently, that just doesn't like do it justice, but like with what sensitivity and consciousness he you know, handled my case, so to speak, you know. Like from it was never like what I'm trying to say is like he was never trying to collect resources for his mission, like in this kind of materialistic angle. He was like looking deeply on a conscious level. What is this person ready for, and what is good for them at this point in their? It's not like I have this goal and I have that goal. I want to achieve this. I want to achieve that. I need this much money. I need this many people. And it's very easy to slip into that way of thinking when you're dealing with practical matters in a mission. It's really easy to slip into that. But that's not what this is about. It's so much more than that. It's a purely spiritual mission. So like in my own case, when I started to get inspired, I was helping Madhusudan Maharaj with some of his projects, like long distance. I was living in England at the time. And so we were like, you know, I was sending things to the internet. And then I came to India for the first time by myself. And then when I was there, everything just kind of clicked. And everyone was telling me, oh, you should stay here. Mahananda Prabhu needs an assistant, needs a secretary, you should stay here. And it just seemed to make so much sense. And I felt like, yeah, this is the right thing to do. And all the senior devotees are telling me this is the right thing to do. And so Mahananda told me, okay, you should ask Gurudev. And so I went to ask Gurudev. But there was a little part of me, or maybe not so little, that was not really feeling quite ready. like give up your life. I was in the middle of a degree in England. And you know, I wasn't feeling, there was a part of me that was feeling like, yes, I've got to do this. This is the right thing to do. This is what I really want. But then there was another part of me which was, I'm not ready for this, you know, like to just give up the world and go stay in Navadvip for the rest of my life. give up like all security, and I really was not feeling ready for that. But I was like pressuring myself, like this is the right thing to do. And so I went and I asked Gurudev, for his blessings to do that. And he was really cautious, really hesitant, looking at me. And then he asked me, what are you doing in England? And I told him, well, I'm studying. And he said, well, you should finish your studies. You should go back and finish your studies. And that was generally that was like his standard answer to devotees who were in that type of dilemma. He told one devotee, education is life insurance. Get your education and then decide what you're going to do. So he gave me that, like his standard answer. And then there was half of me which was really relieved, like, oh, thank God, I don't have to do that. I wasn't really ready. But then the other half of me was like, hey, I really want to do this. Why are you stopping me? That reverse psychology thing. So like by his rejection, he burned up all the doubt that I'd had about doing this. So I went back to England and carried on with my studies. And then a few months later, it was the summertime, and I thought, well, September's approaching. It's my second year. Things are going to get really crazy at university. I should go again to India. I don't know when I'll be able to go. So I went in March for Gaur Purnima. Then I went again in August, just a few months later. And meanwhile, this fire, because of Gurudev's like pushing me away a little, and this fire inside of me was increasing. I really want to give my whole life to Krishna. When you have that like fanatic, like beginner enthusiasm that was like growing inside of me, Saraswati Thakur's statement, the whole world may be on fire. I think we were talking about this last week. The whole world may be on fire. Still, all your needs will be met by Krishna Anushilana, by the cultivation of devotion to Krishna. So that fire, like now we have these newcomers, Catherine and Griffin here. I'm literally learning from them. I'm actually like having to tell them to tone down a bit. Like Catherine, she's like posting the stuff on her Facebook, like surrender to Krishna. I'm like, Kat, your friends might be a little freaked out by some of this. So I'm learning from them. So, we all go through this beginner, ideally we can maintain that at every moment, but at least in my case, I haven't been able to. So I was like really going through this like fire of enthusiasm. And then I went back to India again in August, and my mood had just completely changed. I'd grown so much in those few months because of the way that Gurudev had handled me. It's like he'd given me that space to come to my own conclusion. He wasn't like just thinking, oh, I could do it, a young, intelligent person to add to my team here. They, they're active, they can do many things. He wasn't thinking like that. He was looking at me as an individual and considering what are they ready for. And so that gave me the space to grow and to have my own realization and for my desire to increase. So I went back again in August, and then and one day, and I was helping Mahananda again, and one day, and so one day Gurudev just looked at me, and as I came in, and he said, "How long can you stay?" And I said, "Gurudev, as long as you like." And so that was it. Then I went back to England for a month, and then I came back to India, and I just pretty much stayed there for the next 10 years. And then it was just brilliant the way he handled me when I was there. He allowed me to stay with him for the first, like more or less the first. I was there for the last 5 years. He was present. It was like half of the time he allowed me to, for the first 2.5 years or so, he allowed me to stay with him, because Gurudev was generally in Navadvip. He was generally in Calcutta, and he would send everyone to Navadvip, which could be a challenge sometimes, because everyone wanted to be with Gurudev, but there wasn't that much service in Navadvip. And Calcutta was meant to be like the transit station, and it was Gurudev's office, and it was close to the doctors and all of his, duties. He had many duties to attend to there. So, devotees had to be shunted along to Navadvip often. But Gurudev was very merciful, and he allowed me to stay, follow him. He would, he'd move to Navadvip sometimes, but mostly be in Calcutta. So he allowed me to stay with him for the first, 2.5 years. And that was also very sweet, the way he handled that, because everyone was thinking when I was coming to India, oh, she's coming to be Madhusudan Maharaj's. We've got Pandita coming up, and we've got Maheshwari coming up, Dandavat. So everyone thought I'm coming to India to help Mahananda and Navadvip. And I was thinking that, and that's generally what everyone was thinking. But then when I got to Calcutta and I was there with Gurudev, I was like, I don't want to go to Navadvip. I just want to stay here with Gurudev. and so Mahananda, he'd be calling me sometimes, oh, so when are you coming? Yeah, I'm coming. And then finally it was Srila Sridhar Maharaj's Vyasa Puja festival, and Gurudev was told devotees, my health isn't so good, I'm going to stay here in Calcutta, but I'm requesting the devotees to all go to Navadvip. And so I couldn't avoid it. So I went to Gurudev, super timid. Gurudev, do you want me to go to Navadvip? I was like, oh man, this is it. This is the death toll. I'm going to get kicked out. And then he said, he was just he just treated me like a baby, And he said, you can go for 2 days. I was like, yes. And I was super arrogant. And I called Mahananda and I was like, well, yeah, I'm coming for the festival, but Gurudev said I can only come for 2 days. So I went there. We had a 2 or 3 day festival, and then I came back to Calcutta, and so I got that kind of baby treatment for the first couple of years, and then one year I came back from a visa exit, and I went to Thailand for a week because we had to leave every 6 months, and then I came in and I saw Gurudev, and he was just friendly. And Mahananda was there in Calcutta at the time, and he said, oh, did Gurudev tell you? And I was like, no, he didn't tell me anything. So, well, Gurudev, he said that he wants you to go to Navadvip. Because that was the time Gurudev had started keeping Mahananda. Gurudev, this was 2008. I think it was 2008, and Gurudev had lost his driver, and so he'd had Mahananda, and no doubt he wanted Madhusudan Maharaj for other things as well. He just wanted him with him, he was his trusty secretary. So he had Mahananda with him more in Calcutta, and that time Brinda and Kelly Kadamba, and some very responsible ladies, they were taking care of things in Navadvip, but then they had to leave. And so Gurudev wanted somebody responsible there. And so he told Mahananda he wanted me to go. And Mahananda said, and I tried to tell Gurudev, you're doing so much here in Calcutta, it would be great if you could stay. But he was adamant, no, you've got to go. So then it was like I was the baby being pushed out of the nest. I was so devastated. And crying and crying and crying. but I made the trip to Navadvip, but then what happened is I developed an attachment for the service, because it's like the beginning level that you're just attached to being with Guru, you know, like a child. And then as you mature, you realize that actually your real connection comes through service. And it's, you know, it's like you're the child always calling daddy, daddy, daddy. And then when you grow up, you're working things out for yourself and applying what you've learned. So that kind of transformation started to take place. And I became, you know, very attached to the service and Navadvip. And that became a lifeline for me. And then when Gurudev left, I was in a strong position, you know, in terms of like consciousness. I mean, in the sense that you know, it wasn't like Gurudev left and I'm just like, I have nothing, but I had this whole service connection that could keep me strong. And then he also gave me saffron, literally 6 months before he left the world, which is just miraculous. Because that was the fact that he'd given me that cloth, it also just helped to keep me focused, because it was a time, you know, as many of you know, when Gurudev left, it was like the world collapsed. I mean, internally, and then also in a missionary sense, there was so much, you know, messiness, let's say, in the mission. So much drama took place on a missionary level, and I was very young. I was, you know, I was 24 at that time. It was 2010, and for, you know, when you're like young like that and new really, then Guru is everything. And so if the Guru is not there, then that attachment that you have to the service and to you know, the practice, it can diminish. And you know, and seeing all this madness around me, because really there was some really mad stuff. And I mean, I really don't know what would have become of me, but the fact that Gurudev had like given me this, like directly, personally given me this service, and then B, he'd given me this cloth, it was, you know, that protected me. You know, I don't have any illusions about myself. You know, I'm such a great person wearing saffron. It's actually a protection. You know, it's something to keep you on track. So really, it was just and all of this, what I'm saying now is like, this is like through realization, like years after Gurudev left, like just kind of like having that bird's eye view of like how he handled me at this point and at that point, how he directed me. And it's like, I'm like overwhelmed. Like he was, you know, like every point, at every decision that he made in like taking care of me, he was thinking about like the overall trajectory of my journey in Krishna consciousness in eternity. It was like, you know, like every instruction that Gurudev ever gave, it was like that. You know, he wasn't just speaking in that moment. He was seeing within like the total, you know, the sum total of your journey in Krishna consciousness. So, you know, and as I said, you know, still now, like I'm remembering things and appreciating them with new light. I was telling him the other day that I didn't have like a close relationship with Gurudev, and you know, I feel like that was one of the main one of the main things actually that I felt Gurudev was teaching me on a personal level. That was like one of his themes, that our relationship is not based on a physical connection. It's a spiritual service connection. That was one of the main themes that I felt he was teaching me in our interactions. But there was one, you know, so I didn't have like so much personal interaction with him, and I wasn't blessed with so much chastisements, as some of you here were blessed with, because to receive chastisement from Gurudev, that is like the ultimate mercy. That's the expression of the deepest kind of trust and affection. So I didn't get so much of that, but there was one incident, and I only like told the story for the first time like this year, because it was so painful, so humiliating for me. But how he just threw me out one day. Which he wouldn't. It's not like he never did that. He would do that sometimes, send people out. But it was something like if he trusted you. But that's a realization I'm only able to have now. It's been like this painful thing in my heart, for years, and I'm only now able to talk about it. But it was when I first got to India, and this was also a very deep lesson for me. And this is a real danger that we have in spiritual life, is that, because really, we had a really nice discussion about this a few days ago, really on Brahmananda Rai's disappearance day. Spiritual life, Krishna consciousness exists in the aspiration for Krishna consciousness. It exists in that feeling that you don't have it, that it's over there and you want it and you're striving for it, because you're always evolving and you're always perceiving higher and higher levels of truth, like just ahead. And so it's mentioned, that this idea is mentioned in different places by our gurus, that our real wealth is the aspiration that we have to serve. This is, in many places it's mentioned. In particular, we can remember Srila Sridhar Maharaj's, the verse that Srila Sridhar Maharaj wrote when he founded the Mats. It concludes with this Radha Jitasha. The asha is hope, aspiration. So the aspiration to serve Radha Krishna, Radha Govinda. It's also mentioned by Raghunath Das Goswami in several places. So this is an important point, that real spiritual vitality is achieved and can be maintained and sustained through this mood of aspiring. Not the material approach is to think you have something, but in spiritual transactions, the moment you try to capture something, you lose it. It's gone. As Srila Sridhar Maharaj says in one place, the Vaikuntha Sampad, the wealth of Vaikuntha, it is very, I can't think of the exact word, but very flickering, he said. That it can be extended, but it can also be withdrawn. So if that assertion is made, by grace, something may be extended, some spiritual wealth may be extended. But the moment that we then go to assert and say, oh, I have it, then we lose it. It can be withdrawn. And externally, everything, and this is why it's frightening, because externally, everything can be continuing just the same, but that vitality is gone. So I suffered from this when I first went to India, because it was when I was around 18 or something, I started to go just mad, for Krishna consciousness, just mad. I'd wake up in the night, cut off all my hair, crying, so desperate for Krishna consciousness. Really deeply feeling this need in my heart. And then when I got to India, I thought, oh, well, now I have it. Now I'm in India, I'm at the lotus feet of a Mahabhagavat, I'm doing service here. I don't need to strive anymore. I've already got it. I'm here. I'm there. I made it. So I actually lost that inner mood of hankering and desperation. It's like everything can become cheap when you get it like that. You can feel like it's too easy, it's too quick, and it can become cheapened. So that, that disease affected me. And I started imitating like Gurudev's personal servitors. And I mean, I'm still like really embarrassed to talk about it, but this is what happened. And so I, like Jamuna Priya and Bhakti Lalita, Mahananda Prabhu, they had secretarial services with Gurudev, so they'd sit there with their computers. And so in the beginning, I just started copying them. I would just go and like all the time, like awkward times, I just sit there on my computer and I just had like random stuff that I was doing. I had I was doing genuine projects, but it wasn't related to Gurudev. I didn't need to be there. I was just wanted to be with Gurudev, and I was copying everybody else. So I'm 20 years old. I'm a kid. And so I started doing that, and so one day I was sitting there like quite close to Gurudev on my computer, and doing some web page or something, and then Gurudev, and it was coming time for Gurudev's lunch. I really should not have been there, and so then he just looked at me and he said, "What are you doing?" And foolishly, I thought, oh, he wants to know what I'm doing. So I actually went to like explain to him what I'm doing. And then he just pointed to the door. He said, "You go now." So it was, that was so painful for me, but he actually saved me. It was like he gave me a slap, but he rescued me, and he reminded me, he woke me up. Like, this is not what Krishna consciousness is, like sitting next to Guru and having that physical connection and making some show, without any real service necessity. Like, that's not what this is about. And he could have easily humored me, as he would. Gurudev really would humor people and tolerate many things. So it was really his mercy that he rescued me from that pitfall. and after that, I make mistakes, but I learn my lessons. So I really learned my lesson. And after that, like I always kept it more of a distance, but our relationship became so much stronger. Like internally, the relationship became so much stronger. And Gurudev, he was so subtle, and he always, you could always perceive, once you were kind of a little more awake, you could perceive, you could get some clue as to how you're doing. I had a nice talk about this with Deva Bandhu Prabhu, who was one of Gurudev's personal servitors, and we were both expressing how it was like having a daily live reading of how you're doing in spiritual life. Like just live reading, like here is God, basically. Here's Guru, representation of the Lord. And just by the expression on his face, you're getting some, like, what's your current status in your approach to divinity? So it was very intense, because he was so subtle, and there was so much depth in everything, in every look, and every word, and very mystical. It was clear he could read what we were thinking, what we were feeling. It was very mystical. So after that, I became a little more awake, and more alert and observant. Like, what's the real transaction? What's really going on? How is the real current of Krishna consciousness moving? And how am I doing? And no doubt I had my ups and downs, but on the whole, from that moment, our relationship became a lot stronger. So. Yeah, it was just, when you have an experience like that, it's so powerful because you don't see that, like just in everything, there was so much deep exchange and deep transmission going on. That there was this one, I'll go a little bit more. I'll just tell this one story and then we can maybe we'll conclude. I don't want to go on forever. Take up your day. But there was this one exchange I had with Gurudev where Gurudev had this, as Chinmoy Prabhu of course knows, Gurudev had this light switch thing. And Jumuna Priya of course knows about that light switch thing. It was one of his funny things. And for anyone who's been to India, you'll see they have this crazy system of putting, they have a board in every room and the switch for everything in the room, for every light, every fan, it's all on that one board, all lined up together in rows. And so it's very confusing, because especially if it's a big room and there's 5, 6, 7 different lights and there's 2 or 3 fans, it's very difficult. And so it was this very funny kind of game that Gurudev had with the devotees, and he'd ask them but with Gurudev, everything that he did and this is the real point, like even the most mundane things, they took on so much significance. And so it was like he wasn't just asking you to turn on a light. It was like he was testing your spiritual adhikar. like there was this other occasion. Sundar Prabhu told me this. I love this example. He's an Australian devotee, Sundar, and he used to help Sagar Maharaj in England with a lot of stuff. And so he was present in London when the first copies of Brahma Samhita arrived. And so Navasundar received the package and he brought it up to Gurudev. And so Gurudev instructed him to open the package. And so like the pressure of having Gurudev watching you while you're opening a package, that is not to be underestimated. So Gurudev's like watching him and Navasundar is like super conscious and he opened the package like with like very deep care, not just like, normally if you get it, or at least myself, you just rip it open, right? But he like very carefully, very methodically, systematically opened up the package. And Gurudev was so happy. It was almost like he was testing him. Like how well you can open the package will show me your success in spiritual life. So Gurudev was so happy, and when he finished, Gurudev made some comment like, "Oh, it's so nice how carefully you opened it," and then he said, "Like Krishna bless you," like something like that. It's just so amazing having these experiences with these kinds of Vaishnavas, because you get a glimpse of that world of consciousness. Like we do things with such lack of consciousness, but for persons like that, every movement, every word is full of so much consciousness and depth and love. There's also Srila Sridhar Maharaj. He tells this wonderful story, how he was in Vrindavan once with Saraswati Thakur. And Saraswati Thakur, he'd be out like wearing shoes, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj commented that he was particularly observing his guru, because he said, I wanted to see his Vrindavan mood, like what his mood would be in Vrindavan. So he said, I was like closely observing him. And so he had this one experience where, so Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur, he was outside, he came back to his residence, and he took off his shoes, and you know, in the anyone who's following a Vedic standard, you know, you don't go inside with your shoes, right? So he took his shoes off outside the house, and then he turned around like to pick up his shoes to put them somewhere. And Srila Maharaj, he was like very attentive, and he thought, oh, well, I'll pick up the shoes, you know, to save Prabhupada the trouble. And so Srila Maharaj went to take the shoes before Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur could take them. And he said, as he went to take them, then Prabhupada, when I say Prabhupada, I mean Saraswati Thakur. Then Prabhupada looked at him and he just said, I will take it. Just like these 3 words, I will take it. But he said, there's a recording of Srila Maharaj talking about this, and he said the way that he said it was so sweet and so loving and so heart-touching, and how he felt this Vrindavan sweetness coming out of him. Like just in this like tiny little phrase and this tiny little interaction, he felt such profundity, such depth, and such love and sweetness, just in this tiny little transaction over a pair of shoes, you know, picking up a pair of shoes. So that was the experience that we had with Srila Gurudev. Like every interaction was pervaded with this type of depth. And you know, many of our devotees here, they can testify to that. You know, there's some, you know, I've met devotees, they only met Gurudev once for 5 minutes, and they're talking about it for the rest of their lives, you know, because it made such a deep impression upon them. So I had this one interaction with Gurudev, which, you know, apparently it was super like ordinary, mundane, but internally there was this incredible depth in it. When I'd been sick for a few days, like I had a fever or something. This was when I was still in Calcutta, and then I came down, and then so I was better. It was like the 3rd day or something, and I was better. And I came down to give Dandavat to Gurudev, and I was feeling so awkward because, you know, I hadn't been there for several days, and I was thinking like, oh, should I explain myself, or, you know, should I apologize? I hadn't like been around or something. I was feeling really awkward, and then I stood up, and Gurudev just kind of like half glanced at me, and he said, "Give light." And in that like one instant, it was like so many things took place, because on the one hand, he just like, he treated me he would never ask me, because I wasn't one of his servitors. He would never ask me to do anything like that. So the fact that he treated me like that was like very intimate. He just treated me like I was part of the furniture. I was always around. I was one of his personal servitors. And so he like made me feel like this deep sense of like family. Oh, I'm just part of the family. And then at the same time, he was telling me to turn on the light and give light. And in retrospect, it was so funny, because Madhusudan Mahananda at the time, he was seated there on Gurudev's veranda, and he knew about Gurudev's whole light switch thing. And so he became very alarmed, like for my sake. He was very concerned. Like, oh no, he was worried, like, oh no, she's gonna get in trouble. Oh man, my battery. So, you know, Mahananda, he's so sweet. He's still so sweet and caring, and he was like worried about me. You know, he wanted to help me out. So he said to Gurudev very quickly, which light, Gurudev? But we had this, I had this just, it was this very mystical transmission. And Gurudev just ignored Mahananda, like she knows what she's doing, like, you know, don't worry. And somehow I just knew, like, and I didn't know the switches, I didn't know the lights, and I just like had this instinct about turning on one light. And it was the perfect one. It was the one that he wanted. So yeah, it was incredible. And also another thing was at the time I was reading, so while I'd been sick, I was reading Subjective Evolution of Consciousness, and Srila Maharaj is talking about consciousness and light, and so it's like this whole thing took place over this very mundane transaction over a light switch. Just amazing, just amazing. We only pray that we can be in that kind of association one day again. And in the meantime, we're trying to be faithful. As we discussed last week, we're trying to be real friends, true friends to Gurudev, and remain faithful to his teachings, and maintaining our loving relationships with his faithful followers. Also, we have so much opportunity to serve him and remember him, and to continue with full hope. Well, I'll maybe stop there. Thank you all so much for giving me your good association and putting up with my rambling on.
Vishakha Devi Dasi ki.
Thank you, Vishakha Didi. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chinmay.
Jai Vishakha.
Oh, that was Jamuna waving. We've had a few extra people join here. Well, it's so wonderful to see everybody's beautiful faces or their beautiful names.
Thank you, Vishakha Didi. This is Ram. I joined as a Rajiv.
Yeah. Wow, Jai. Very nice to see your name here, Ramananda Prabhu.
Yeah, I joined with my Karmi name, Rajiv. I was going to.
Oh, you're Rajiv. You're Rajiv.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Very enlivening. Yeah, very. Help me put things in a proper perspective. Yeah, I had some association with Gurudev, but then I was away for a long time. Here, I've been here. So it's, I don't know, after he left, it hasn't been so easy. So
Yes.
things.
Hey, Didi, if I can just mention one story that I think is very nice, as long as we're talking about light bulbs.
Yes.
So people have to understand, like, the chastisement of Gurudev is super affectionate. It's like,
Yes.
it's really hard to understand, like, how it's like that. And even like Didi was saying about that one simple phrase that Srila Maharaj heard from Srila Prabhupada, I will get it, or I will take, or something like that. The power of these type of personalities to infuse something with some spiritual essence is really incredible. And chastisement is the same. And so
Yes.
there was this one time where Nakul Prabhu, who was a servitor of Gurudev, was there with him. And there was this big dresser, like in the middle of the veranda, and the door was open. And inside that door was a mirror. And Gurudev was pointing in that direction and saying, turn off, turn off. And so Nakul was looking in that direction, and all he was seeing were lights that were already turned off, because the light that was turned on behind was reflecting off that mirror and into Gurudev's eyes. And so Nakul, he's go to this light switch, that switch, trying to turn something on and off, trying to figure out which one it is. And then finally, Gurudev says to him, extremely foolish. Like, if we hear this, like, so if it's coming from a maybe normal personality, it would be like, well, how was I supposed to know that? It was reflection, and stuff like that. But
Yes.
Nakul was like so happy. Right?
Yes.
Personal connection with.
Yeah. No, that was the ultimate, to have Gurudev's chastisement. That was like a privilege, not everybody had. That was like the best. But he could be so funny, there was one devotee, I won't say the name, but but he was telling to turn on the light, and he said, and they couldn't find the right switch. And he said, if you cannot even turn on the light, you may as well leave Krishna consciousness. Yeah, he was so funny, Gurudev. But he also, Shuddha Shabu told me, Shuddha Shabu was struggling with changing a light bulb once. And Gurudev said, how many Americans does it take to change a light bulb?
And if I could also just say, like, because I've been listening to many videos, and one video, because this really expresses the mood of Govinda Maharaj, is that in the late 70s, early 80s, these Westerners were then coming to Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat, to Shuddha Maharaj, and Shuddha Maharaj was feeling at that time, he didn't know how long he would be in this world. So he was expressing to Srila Govinda Maharaj, you know, who is going to take care of these people? How can I take care of these people who are coming? What's going to happen to them? And Govinda Maharaj said, I will take care of them. I will watch over them. And Shuddha Maharaj said to him, but you don't even speak English. And Gurudev was like, I know, very good, take. But that was his mood. It wasn't
That's
like,
right. Yes, no, very good, right? That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, he knew very good. So that's that, you know, but that was his mood, is that he didn't, he felt it was a heart-to-heart connection. It wasn't anything of distributing knowledge or power or wealth, or anything like that. He wanted to express his heart to the devotees, and he felt that that was the most important thing. And he would do that through his affection.
Yes.
He had an unlimited capacity to do that.
Yes. Yes. Aye. Well, does anyone else want to add anything or ask anything or anything? Or should we wrap things up?
I also do have a question from somebody. Vishakha?
Sorry, what did you say?
I have a question from somebody.
Okay.
So if Gurudev has not given a specific instruction to devotee, does that mean that Gurudev knew that this person throughout their life would not be able to follow this instruction, or was it just at that moment that person would not be able to follow the instruction?
You know what? I'll just be like 5 seconds. I just have something in my throat. Sorry. You're entertained.
This is the real confidential stuff, hearing the nectar of Guru straight from the lips of the devotees. This is the real secret nectar. Okay, sorry, what was the question? If Gurudev didn't give a specific instruction to someone, does that mean that he didn't think they would be able to follow it?
Ever to follow it, like that person's not capable for this lifetime, but or is it just like something temporary, like at this moment this person is not able to follow that instruction?
Yeah, good morning.
What was that? I mean, it sounds like someone's mentaling out a little bit. Yeah, it sounds like someone's suffering from some self-doubts. I mean, I think I would probably, in order to answer properly, I probably need to hear the context. But as you indicated, you know, we can't take everything Gurudev said necessarily as an absolute statement. So yeah, but I mean, I think to give a proper answer, I would need to have more details. But yeah, I mean, this is something Srila Maharaj has mentioned, that, you know, that we have to consider, we can't just take one statement of Guru
at one time and place in one circumstance and consider that. And this is where friction and arguments can come up between disciples. They'll say, Gurudev said this, or Prabhupada said this, Well, he also said this, So it's something Srila Maharaj just mentioned. We have to take the sum total of all these statements and find the common thread and see which is applicable in each time, place, and circumstance. So, I would have to hear the detail, but to give like a proper answer. But in general, I would say no. Of course, it's a living thing, and it may not necessarily be that we're limited by what we were told at a particular time. Gurudev can change his instruction. He can tell you one thing one day and then tell you something else the next day, depending on your level of realization and spiritual necessity. So, yeah, that's my understanding, and it's also been my experience with Gurudev. It was a living thing, and it was something that changed. And what's right at one time may not be right at another time. So we want to live progressive lives, and we have to develop some spiritual discrimination and intelligence to be able to make the appropriate decisions at the appropriate time. It's not easy. Not easy, but we all have to try and be smart, try and be spiritually smart. And if we're sincere, if we're very sincere, then clarity will come. We'll find that if we can pray to Gurudev for the clear guidance, and that will come. And it may come from another Vaishnava. It may come in the course of our, Shravan, our hearing. It may come through some clarity in the heart, some revelation in the heart. But if we're sincere, the answer will come, through one channel or another. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Chinmoy?
No, that's wonderful. I think that's perfect.
And when in doubt, one can always consult with the trusted Vaishnava for the particulars. And also, this is another point, we can't be afraid of making mistakes. Too much analysis leads to paralysis. So Srila Maharaj emphasizes this line from Bhagavad Gita, Nahi kalyana krit kaschid durgatim tatagachati, that sincerity is invincible. So this is something else, but an important point, because we can get stuck on doing something the right way, avoiding the wrong way. We can get stuck on that, but that's not what it's really about. It's more about intention. Of course, it's also about, moving in the right direction, making the right decisions, but the fundamental need is that our intention is good, is sincere, and inevitably we will make mistakes, but that's okay. We can learn from our mistakes and we can continue making forward. So we don't want to get stuck on that, in that mood of being afraid of doing the wrong thing. That won't get us anywhere. So, yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Maybe for later, Dandavat Vishakha, but I have a quick question.
Yes.
How can one harmonize that plurality of ideas of a direction? Like, maybe I got this idea of some instruction, but another devotee had another idea. And how can one harmonize that as to not, of course, get into trouble or a discussion or something?
You mean harmonize in a social sense or harmonize within your own heart?
Both. Like, if, for example, I get this idea of instruction, but I see that maybe the other devotee is doing it differently or something like that, and I tend to be like a little bossy sometimes, and I, of course, train myself for that. But how can I like say, okay, that's their perception and that's their, you know, of the same instruction, but that's their way?
Well, the thing is, we have to leave space for other people to grow at the pace that they're ready for. So, you know, you may have a more evolved understanding of something. And that's your good fortune, you know, that's grace that you've been able to understand it. But then, you know, we don't want to take our grace and hit somebody over the head with it. You know, we can't. And I'm, you know, I go through that myself, you know, so I totally understand what you're saying. You know, I completely understand, you know, I mean, it gives you a sense of, you know, there's a danger of feeling kind of privileged when you've had the fortune of being exposed to more developed ideas within Krishna consciousness, and we have a deeper understanding of the proper application of various things. So it can make us feel a little privileged, but we have to remember that, you know, first of all, we want to adjust ourselves. That's the most important thing, and whether or not we will extend that understanding to others will depend on whether they have a real necessity for it. So we have to be sensitive to that it's not just about doing everything right, and it's not like, you know, we don't want to make you know, like this mechanized way of doing things that everybody, you know, we're trying to put some conception or information in your head and you're going to understand it like this and you're going to do it like that. No, it has to be like something natural and organic. It has to be something that they're happy to learn, something that they want to learn. So of course, in some cases it may be necessary, but more often than not, if they do it in a somewhat wrong way or with a somewhat wrong understanding, it's not the end of the world. And the thing is, if people have the space to, and that this is also like some of the things that I experienced with Gurudev. You know, he gave people that space to grow, and to realize things when they were ready for that. So, you know, and another thing you have to consider is like how much faith do they have in you? You know, we don't, because this is another point that we may like have the right understanding, but if somebody doesn't have full faith in us, then it won't be helpful for them actually to hear it. You know, they won't really be able to embrace it. So it should come in response to their faith in you, and like if you have that relationship with them where they want to hear from you and they really trust you, it should, otherwise it can be like you're imposing on them, and maybe you're giving them the right understanding, but you may disturb their faith a little bit, you know, or it can confuse them. So, you know, if we see people have more of a simple idea of Krishna consciousness, you know, more often than not, it's best to just let them continue with that.
And when that hunger arises within them for a deeper understanding, then, then that's the appropriate time for that, higher descent to take place. And you have to consider whether you're the right person to be the instrument of that. So yeah, I mean, missionary. There's this rule. Is it rules of the temple? There's this one thing Srila Bhakti Sundar Saraswati Thakur wrote, and one of the points there was tolerance is the foremost duty of a member of a mott. So it requires a lot of tolerance, on so many different levels. And that is one of the things we have to tolerate, seeing persons who have different conceptions, different levels of realization, and to be free of that ego that, oh, I know better than them, and they don't really know what they're doing, and to be free of that tendency to assert that over them as well. It's like the way that you may treat a child. You can't. The child is at a particular level of understanding, and you can't force a higher level of understanding. So, we have persons in our mission who are all different ages, but you may have a 60-year-old who's really very, very new in Krishna, and you also have people who've been practicing for 30 years and still have a very new beginner understanding of what Krishna consciousness is about. So, and we don't need to be critical, but we should be a little smart, as to like being able to assess like where somebody is. Maybe they're 60 years old, maybe they've been practicing for 20 years, but what is actually their level of understanding? It may be less developed than somebody who joined, yesterday or a year ago, or, and we see devotees who join and they just start flying. They like very quickly, they're getting everything in a very deep way. So yeah, we have to have that level of sensitivity and awareness to see where somebody is in terms of their realization. What are they ready for, and what is my relationship with them? We have to have that level of detachment. And all of these, if nothing else, we can learn from all of these situations and in different ways. We may not be able to change it, but we can learn. So some detachment and tolerance, it is necessary. Swarnangi, she told me this one occasion when, I think it was the time when Vishakha Devi Prabhu was the manager in SoCal, and he was like super magnanimous, and he had all kinds of people coming and staying in the temple, and and I think like there were like cigarettes lying around sometimes, and all kinds of stuff. and Swarnangi, she was trying to give some instruction on different points to some of these people, and they weren't taking it. And so she asked Gurudev, she didn't mention, I don't think she mentioned the particulars, but she asked Gurudev, what can I do if there's someone who needs some instruction, but they're not being very receptive, what should I do? And Gurudev just told her, if they will listen to you, if they will hear from you, you can tell them. And if not, then to heaven or hell, let them go. And she was shocked, like how he had like such detachment, like if they want to be independent and make their own way, then let them make their own way. If they're not open, if they're not in a place of being open to hearing, then why would you try to force that upon them? It has to come from their side, that they want to hear something. So, and just through your own beautiful conduct, devotees will have confidence in you, and you'll experience that devotees will start to ask you, what do you think? Because that's another thing, we can be in that place of always like trying to tell everyone, but if we withdraw from that
that kind of egoistic tendency, then people start to pay more attention to actually. Because often there's this kind of like clamor, everyone wants to like give their opinion, you know. But you know, more sober people, you know, everyone starts to give attention to them. What do they think? They've been quiet. They're not like throwing their opinion in there. I want to hear what they think. So just by your beautiful example and your sober mood and you know the obvious experience that you have in Krishna consciousness, you'll see people will naturally gravitate to you and you know want to ask you, you know, what do you think? And then that's when like a real transaction can develop. And it's also when it happens like that, then there's like this confidence that it's not happening. They have this confidence that it's not happening from a place of ego on your side, because you weren't going to tell them. So they know that you're free from that ego. That gives them some sense of trust. Oh, I can trust this person because they haven't like come to me like everybody else and giving me their opinion. You know, they're not trying to force anything upon me. So that, you know, that brings this trust. And then you can develop, you know, deeper relationships with devotees, actually, more meaningful relationships. So yeah, I mean, you know, it is difficult. You know, we all know it is a difficult thing. But yeah, the main point I would just make is we have to give people space, give them time and space, you know, to learn at their own speed. That would be the overall thing I would say. Yeah, and you know, sometimes we have to bite our arm, as Gurudev said. And you want to say something, but you got to bite your arm. Not going to say it.
Thank you so much.
You're such an inspiration, Daivati. You're such a sweet and
I'm not.
so devotee.
That's the end of it. I'm not going to say anything else. My dandavat.
Okay. Well, over to you, Chinmoy Prabhu. Should we?
Thank you so much, Stevie, for being with us today, taking time out.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we're very happy that you can join us.
Dandavat, Vishakha.
Hey, Jamuna, Dandavat. Jai, Jamuna Priya Didi Ki Jai. Now, Jamuna, she's one of these privileged persons who got all kinds of mercy from Gurudev.
That's for sure.
Up close and personal.
And we had Sita Devi Dasi here yesterday. Or she was here today.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing.
And the kids too, so great. Yeah. And Ash was there too, yeah.
Jai, Jamuna Priya Didi Ki Jai.
Hi.
Who is that next to Ash?
It's my mama.
Wow.
Oh, there's Sita.
Hey.
Beautiful talk, Vishakha. Really heart nourishing. Feel so
Sita here, amazing. Now, Sita, she's like in the top 10. Sita got so much affection from Gurudev, so much mercy from Gurudev. Here's we have Saraswati here. We have Lavanya. Sita, your presence is being requested.
Dandavat.
Jamuna Priya is here. There's Jamuna Priya.
Oh, Dandavat. Oh, hi, Saraswati. Oh, is that Lavanya?
Lavanya, yay!
Here. Got all the super devotees here.
Oh, there is the Ash.
Yeah, Ash is there.
What about Brian?
Oh, we've just been. We're running quite late. Brajamohini Didi's here.
Dandavat. Yay. Nice to see you all.
Okay. So next Monday, we'll continue, right?
Please. Weekend, that'd be wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Vishakha Didi, Dandavat. Send your blessing. Thank you.
Thank
you,
Vishakha. Bimala, you have to work out so we can have your darshan. Have somebody, work it out for you.
Yeah, I'll ask someone to help me with that. So thank you, Vishakha Didi. Thank you.
Okay, Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Devi Goswami Maharaj ki Jai.
Jai.
And look forward to meeting you all again very soon.